Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitam Narevam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tatta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sade Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Manchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Yevacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Jari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Rama Ramo Hare Hare. So reading from Jaiva Dharma, 7th chapter, Nitya Dharma and Material Existence. So, Yadav Das and Chandidas, they had gone to Navadvip, Godrum Dvip, and inquiring from the devotees about performing the devotional service, being in this material world. Ananta Das is replying and mentioning about two kinds of devotees, the renunciants, the sannyasis, and the householders, the grihastas. And also mentioning that the grihastas, if they're fully dedicated to performing devotional service, then even as householders, they may advance and become pure devotees. So Chandidas was expressing his good fortune of being able to hear from Anantadas Babaji in regards to this topic, and he understood. So the necessity to take shelter of devotional service under the instructions of advanced devotees. So he's expressing I now understand the meaning of the word samsara. I repeatedly offered Dandavat Pranam to Babaji Mahashai. The Vaishnavas are gurus for the entire world. Today, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, I have acquired real knowledge of this material world. When the Vaishnavas present had heard Anantadas Babaji Mahashai's profound instructions, they all loudly exclaimed, Sadhu, Sadhu. So Sadhu refers to a saintly person. It can also mean well done, well done. But this time many Vaishnavas had assembled there, and they began to sing a bhajan that Lahiri Mahashai had composed. So Lahiri Mahashai, another Vaishnav who had come to Godrum just recently. And so he was actually a good singer. But that is not sufficient to just be a good singer. But one has to be devotional. One has to follow the principles of bhajan or devotional principles as per the instructions of the spiritual master and the scriptures. He gora samsare padya manava napaya dukera shesha sadhu sangha kori hari bhaje yadi tabe antahaya klesha. The jiva who has fallen into this dreadful material existence finds no end to distress. But his troubles come to an end when he is graced by the association of sadhus and then takes to the worship of Sri Hari. Vishaya anale jvaliche hridoy anale bode anale aparada chahi lai Krishna nama anale paraye jala. The raging fire of sensual desire scorched his heart. And when he tries to satisfy those desires, the fire simply flares up with greater intensity. However, relinquishing offenses and chanting Sri Krishna Nam acts like a cooling shower of rain which extinguishes this blazing fire. Nitai Chaitanya Charana Kamale Ashraila Leyoye Kalidasa Bole Jivane Marine Amara Ashai Se. Kalidas says, he was taking shelter with the lotus seed of Chaitanya Nitya is my refuge in life and in death. So that is the condition of the jiva in this material world. So ghor samsar, this material existence is dreadful, is horrible. Napaya dukera shesh. So pariyamana, if a jiva is following mankind, a human being is falling in this situation, he cannot find the end to the distress. Adhyatmika, the devika, the bhautik klesha there. From one's own body and mind, and from other living entities and natural catastrophes. But most disturbance actually is ultimately coming from one's own mind. Because if the mind is controlled, if one is positive in this material world in regards to whatever is happening and seeing the hand of Krishna and trying to be positively engaged in devotional service, then he can tolerate all difficulties which are coming. Sadhu Sangha Kori Hari Bhaje Yadi. So if one is taking the association of the sadhus and worshipping Krishna, then the end will be there of these difficulties. Otherwise one is in this material world and these desires are there. Jvaliche Hridaya, they're scorching, burning his heart. And actually, so that is a well-known fact. If one is trying to satisfy these desires, so that will simply increase. Just like if you put ghee in the fire, that will increase the fire. So the only way to get relief is by chanting the holy names, which is just like cooling shower of rain. So if there's a fire there and if it is raining, it will be extinguished. And many times there are forest fires in different places, like actually also every year in America, and when it's in the summer, when it's dry, and then forest fire is very common. And once the forest fire is there, mostly by human endeavor, it cannot be extinguished. The only even that we have heard and we have seen in videos and read, even sometimes they take airplanes and they have water in the airplane and they power the water down, but still it is not sufficient. I believe it was last year, so a famous place in Hollywood or Las Vegas, so where the films are produced in America. And so then some of these actors were there and they had a kind of meeting and they were glorifying each other and then polling and then who is the greatest actor or something like this. And then they were asking people, what about God? Anyone is appreciating the existence of God? And then practically nobody was appreciating that. And they were simply laughing at that and God. And so this way they were deriding God. And actually the next day there was a fire. And all these rich people's houses, they were burnt. And they were trying to extinguish the fire. It was not possible. So that is the foolishness of the people in this age, even so-called educated and famous people. They do not understand that God exists, and they deride God. But then they have to reap the result of these offenses. So that was actually quite striking, and many commented on that, because still some religious peoples are there, even in America, and they felt it was outrageous that they were deriding God, and then they acknowledged, yes, so God punished them nicely. So here, aparadachari, so we have to give up aparad, offenses. Aparadachari laya Krishna Nam. So we take Krishna Nam, that is the only way. But we have to give up offenses. So offenses towards the holy name, the 10 offenses are there. Towards the holy name we have to avoid. So especially the first offense also, to blaspheme the devotees of the Lord, who are dedicated to propagating the chanting of the holy names, or who are glorifying the Lord, the pure devotees. So that is the greatest offense. Of course, then also the 10th offense is while chanting not to be attentive and to maintain material attachment, even after hearing some instructions on this matter. So that has to be avoided. And so nama parada there, and then seva parad, serving the deities. If one is not doing this deity seva nicely, then there is an offense. And then one can not be peaceful, and one cannot flourish, spiritually speaking and even materially speaking. And then Dharma parad, living in the holy Dharma, has to be conscious and try to avoid any offense towards the holy Dham, towards the holy names, and towards the deities. And then Jiva Hingsa, also committing violence even to animals or lower creatures, so that has to be avoided. So one has to give up all kinds of aparad and chant the holy names, then one will be able to become free from these desires who are burning the heart. And so one is chanting the holy names, that means one is taking shelter of the Supreme Lord of Nitai, as mentioned here. Nitai Charan, Nitai Chaitanya Charana Kamale Ashailailo Yay. Those who are taking shelter of the lotus feet of Nitai Gaur. So they may be relieved of the difficulties. And then they will feel actually transcendental pleasure by chanting the holy names. And they will advance in spiritual life. And one becomes situated on the spiritual platform. Slowly but surely one becomes free from the influence of the modes of material nature. And then one can feel the loving exchange with Krishna. Krishna is reciprocating. So as the kirtan was going on, Chandidas danced in great ecstasy. He took the dust of the feet of the Babajis upon his head and began to roll on the ground, weeping in intense joy. Everyone declared, Chandidas is extremely fortunate. So Chandidas, just a recap, so as mentioned, first he was a very miserly person. But then, because he was miserly, then his children, they took up the nature of him, and his wife also was also miserly. And they became misers also. And then actually they cheated their parents. And practically they drove them out from the house. And then they took shelter of Navadvip. And that was the beginning of their good fortune. Actually just unknowingly, because Navadvip was famous at that time as a place of learning, as a holy place. So just in a joking way, they said, why don't you go for pilgrimage to Navadvip, and we'll take care of the house and everything. But then they found out that actually, because he had some hidden treasure, and they find out where it was, and they just took it and his children and divided amongst themselves, and also then practically a message was sent, no need for you to come back. So they were devastated, but then actually it was a blessing in disguise of the Lord. So, of the holy Dharma actually, Navadvip. Just by residing in Navadvip, in a humble way, being very repentant that they were so miserly, they understood. And then they were begging for a little while so they could sustain themselves, and then somehow he did a little business, and then he got some money, and then he started to live peacefully in a very simple way, and then he realized that I should do some seva also, Vaishnav seva. And then by doing Vaishnav seva, he got the opportunity to come in the association of great saintly persons, and by the blessings of the Vaishnavas, he became more attached to devotional activities. And so he was feeling great joy and hearing from the Vaishnavas and understanding and taking part in kirtan. Of course, sometimes, so as mentioned here, rolling on the ground, weeping in intense joy, that usually is happening for the advanced devotees. But sometimes Krishna very mercifully gives a little taste even to the devotees who are just in the beginning stage. And so he got a little taste by taking part in kirtan, and he was feeling some ecstatic symptoms. So, but it is a reflection only, pratibimba of the real ecstatic symptoms in the beginning. So sometimes Krishna is merciful and giving some special mercy to inspire, to encourage the devotees. But then one has to work on oneself also and try to really become more and more absorbed in the process of devotional service. with body, mind and words, and abstain from committing any offenses. After some time, Yadav Das said, "Let's go, Chandidas, we need to go to the other side of the river." Chandidas replied smiling, "If you take me across the river of material existence, I will go." So he understood that he has to cross this material existence. The two of them offered Dandavat Pranam to Pradumna Kunj and departed. As they came out of the Kunj, they saw Damayanti offering repeated obeisances and saying, "Alas, why did I take birth as a woman? If I had taken birth as a man, I could easily have entered this Kunj, taken darshan of the great souls, and become purified by taking their dust, their foot dust on my head. May I simply become the servitor of Vaishnavas of Sri Navadi birth after birth and spend my days in their service." So Damayanti was the wife of Chandidas. So usually at that time, so the custom was that mostly, especially amongst the renunciants, so they were doing kirtan together, or discourses were there on the devotional scriptures. So then the ladies were not allowed there. So the ladies at that time, so it was more traditional conservative situation. But then of course, usually the husband would then tell his wife what discussions were going on, and this way she was also getting benefit. But still, it is natural then to be, if one is able to have direct association. So therefore she was lamenting in this way. Why did I take birth as a woman? So therefore we should understand that actually nowadays, even though age of Kali so has advanced more and more, and the situation is not as favorable, so because of the advanced, so-called advanced material civilization, no one is showing much interest in spiritual activities, and even the holy dhams are like Vrindavan, sometimes overcrowded, and with materialistic persons also. They have some sentiment, but still they are attached to material activities. But at least then, still one is able to take association of the sadhus. If one is looking for good association, one can get. And then there is not such a strict restriction for the ladies that they cannot hear from the sadhus, they cannot see the sadhus. So it is a little less strict in this sense. But difficulty is always there. Some sort of difficulty is always there in material existence. But one has to tolerate, and one has to just make the best use of the bad bargain of being in this material world, especially in the age of Kali. But Kaleya doshani de raja nasti eko mahan gunad kirtana dvi Krishna syamukta sangha param brajet. Although Kali Yuga is full of difficulties. Dosh, Kaleya doshani de rajan. Sugriva is speaking to Rajan and Parikshit Maharaj, then my dear king. So the age of Kali, Kale doshe nidhe. Nidhe means an ocean. Ocean of faults, so many faults are there. Environment is not positive, one lives only a short span of life. It's becoming shorter and shorter. And so and then Jaitam Suruto Pangor Mama Mama Mater Gadi Mat Sarva Sabaram Bojo Radha Marana Mohana. So therefore we should take shelter of Madan Mohan, Radha Madan Mohan. All glories to him. Mama Mandamater Gati. So people in the aged, and so they don't have, as explained also in the verses of Bhagavatam, people are not living so long, they don't have sharp intelligence, they don't have good memory, they don't have so good health. And then usually many people are there and they're giving some advice, but many times it is ill advice. People are ill advised. But Asti eko mahan gunat kirtanadu Krishna samukta sangha param braje. But still there's one good quality in the age of Kali, and it is simply by performing kirtan. So, of the names of Krishna, the Mahamantra, then one may become liberated and attain the highest situation. So therefore we should take up the chanting of the holy name seriously and try to avoid offenses. And so yes, then she was praying, okay, so I was not able to take darshan, so therefore she was praying, let me become the servitor of the Vaishnavas of Navadvip. Birth after birth. So one should be patient also, it will take some time to become perfect. But sadhu sangha, Vaishnav seva, that is very important. And then jiva doya, also being kind and merciful towards others, by giving them the holy names, by giving them divine instructions from Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yadavada said, this Godrum Dham is perfectly sacred, is a perfectly sacred place. Simply by coming here one obtains Shuddha Bhakti. Godrum is a cowed village, the place where Satchinandana, the Lord of our life, enacts his divine pastimes. In his heart, Sri Pavanananda Saraswati realized his truth and prayed in the following words. That is, Pavanananda Saraswati, an associate of Mahaprabhu, uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami from South India, but an associate of Mahaprabhu and actually a Gopi, Tungavidi Gopi in Braj Leela. Very dear friend of Srimati Radharani. So he composed many prayers in glorification of Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Mahimamrita. 17 volumes are there of 100 slokas. And then Sri Navadip Shatak is there also, 100 verses glorifying Navadip. So he quoted one verse. Naloka vedo dritamarga vedair avishya sanklishta revi mudaha atena sarvam pariritta gaure si godrume parnakutim kurudvam. O fools, although you have taken shelter of worldly society and the Vedas and adopted many social and religious duties, you remain miserable. Now give up this dubious path and quickly build yourself a leaf hut in Sri Godrum. So yes, ultimately we should take shelter of the holy Dham. So Navadip is most wonderful, and especially Godrum is also one of my favorite places, Godrum, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur had his house, Surabhi Kunj, and where he was doing also his bhajan nearby, Sananda Sukhada Kunj, where his samadhi is, and where he, of course, when he was present, he established the worship of Gaur Gadadhar, and he wrote a beautiful stotram in glorification of Mahaprabhu, who resided also, who spent time in Godrum also. Smara Gaura Gadadhara Kelikalam Madhava Gaura Gadadara Pakshachara Shinu Gaura Gadadara Charukata Bhaja Godruma Kanana Kunjavidum. So Bhaja Godruma Kanana Kunjavidum. So saying, my dear devotees, my dear brothers, Bhaja Godruma Kanana Kunjavidum. So please worship the moon of Godrum in the kunjas of the gardens of Godrum. You worship the moon, that refers to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaura Chandra, Chaitanya Chandra. And there you worship Smara Gaura, or you remember Smara Gaura Gadadhara, the wonderful, remember the wonderful pastimes of Gaura Gadadhara. And please enroll yourself in the group, Paksha of Gaura Gadadhara. Shinu Gaura Gadadhara Charukatam. And please listen, the Charukatam, the very beautiful descriptions of Gaura Gadadhara's pastimes. Hari Sevaka Sevana Dharma Paro Harinama Rasamrita Panarata Nadidayana Daya Paramana Yoto Bhaja Goduma Kanana Kunjavidum. Worship the moon of Godrum, of the Kunja in the gardens of Godrum, Gaurachandra. And what one should do, Hari Sevaka Sevana. And that is Parodharma, that is the highest Dharma, that is Jaiva Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, Nitya Dharma, Vastav Dharma, real religion. Hari Sevana, Sevaka. So you so Hari Sevaka, Sevana Dharma Paro. So serving those who are serving Hari, so as Mahaprabhu said also, Gopi Bhattu Padagama Das Das Anudasaha. Worship the servant of the beloved of the gopis. So we approach the servant of Hari, of Gaura Hari, the servant of Shama Hari, servant of Krishna, the servant of Mahaprabhu. And that is the supreme Dharma, that is the highest Dharma. In the beginning we cannot approach directly the Supreme Lord. Harinama Rasamrita Panarata. So we should be attached, or rata. Harinama Rasamrita Pana. Pana means to drink. Harinam Rasamrit. Harinam is, of course, Harinam is not different from Krishna. So by chanting the holy names, one will feel transcendental pleasure. Ras is there, transcendental mellow, which is like nectar, which is very soothing. So by doing that, then we can overcome all difficulties. Nati daina daya paramana yuto. So the mind should be engaged. Nati daina daya. So not in offering obeisances to Hari Guru Vaishnav. And then daina, we should be very humble. Pakva dainatva, ripe humility should be there. I am insignificant. I am the servant of Krishna. Daya, and then we should be merciful. Merciful to the conditioned souls who are not yet so fortunate to understand their spiritual existence. In this way, exchanging Harikatha, the three crossed the Ganges and arrived in Kulyagram. Thenceforward, both Chandidas and his wife Damayanti displayed a wonderful Vaishnav demeanor. Untouched by the world of Maya, they became adorned with the qualities of Vaishnav Seva, constantly chanting Krishna Nam, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And showing mercy to all jivas. So that is actually Mahaprabhu's instruction also. Nam Ruchi, Vaishnav Seva, Jiva Doya. So chanting the holy names with some taste, Nam Ruchi. So by constantly chanting or chanting as much as possible, then taste will be there. And then Vaishnav Seva should be there, serving the Vaishnavas. And then to Bharat Bhumita Haila Manusya Janma Jara Janma Satakakadi Karaparopakar. So those who have taken birth in Bharatvarsha. So in this realm where Mahaprabhu appeared or Krishna appeared. So one should make one's life perfect. So if one is a human form of life, one has to make one's life perfect by engaging in devotional service. And then having attained perfection or nearly being perfect, then one should be merciful towards others. So to become completely perfect, it will take some time. But becoming more and more advanced, then we can better help others also. And so that is a Vaishnav. He is not concerned only about himself, but he will try to help others. Blessed are the mergentine couple. Blessed is the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Blessed is Sri Navadip Bhumi. Sri Navadip Dharma ki. So, thus ends the 7th chapter of Jaiva Dharma. So some notes are also there in regards to this chapter. So two kinds of entities are there, the animate and the inanimate. So only those are animate, so they are actually able to experience the opportunity to make advancement in spiritual life. But of course, even animals, they can become fortunate to some extent by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, who are giving prasad even to the Vaishnavas, even to the animals. But otherwise, so if one has the human form of life, one should appreciate that and try to advance more and more in Krishna consciousness and try to avoid offenses, try to avoid quarreling amongst each other, which sometimes even amongst the Vaishnavas it is the case, unfortunately, between those who are neophytes actually. So also Bhaktivinoda Thakur has mentioned here, so that in the age of Kali especially it is recommended for the jivas to enter Grihasthashram. It is not easy to be renounced, especially in the age of Kali, because of the environment which is not conducive, because majority of the people are engaged in material activities. So in that environment it is not easy to remain celibate. So therefore, just mentioned that it is recommended in the age of Kali to enter the household ashram for the majority of the human beings, men and women. And then also a point was made of following Vana Ashram Dharma. That is important. So because one is engaged in devotional service, but to attain pure devotional service is not so easy. So therefore we should follow Vana Ashram also. Follow the rules and regulations of the different Vanas and Ashrams. So we stop here. Hare Krishna.